We're on page 7a. And the Gemara that we've been learning is really all about the walls of the Sukkah. And the walls of the Sukkah, how exactly do you fulfill the third wall? Meaning that we're familiar with a special law that the third wall could be a tefach, but that's a really vague law. There seems to be a lot of different ways of understanding that third wall. So, for example, the simplest way is that the third wall could be right next to the other L-shaped walls. You have a third wall. However, some rabbis said, well, wouldn't it be better to have more of a sort of like enclosed area, and maybe it should be more diagonal, like a triangle type of direction. And so you have an L shape, and then the third wall would be like the diagonal. It's sort of like a diagonal line from the two ends of the two walls. And then you had that was left like a question. And then the Gemara mentioned Rav Sivan and Rabbi Yehoshua ben Levi, which says that the tefach, that third wall, that's a tefach, is supposed to be placed in a certain position. You need to put it within 3 handbreadths of the wall, a little less than 3 handbreadths of the wall, and then you have your tefach of solid wall has to be a little more than a tefach. We call it a tefach soichek, a tefach that's laughing, so to speak, that it's open, like when a person laughs, their lips are open, or their mouth is open, is visibly open. So the tefach should be like more a loose tefach, a handbreadth that's more loose, a little bigger than a tefach, and ultimately you'll have 4. It'll be considered like 4 handbreadths because we made the calculation yesterday. 2.9 empty space, 1.1 handbreadths. So 2.9 handbreadths plus 1.1 handbreadths equals 4 handbreadths, which is 2 things. Number one, it's majority of 7, and number 2, it's the significant amount on its own right. In its own right, it's 4 handbreadths, which is considered a significant amount. So we had this opinion of Rabbi Yehoshua ben Levi or of Sivan, and that's how the third wall should be. And the Gemara, if we skip to the next little piece, the Gemara then says a whole new way of understanding it, and this is Rava. And Rava's statement itself is a little vague. The Gemara says there's 3 ways of knowing of 3 opinions of to what Rava really said. One of the ways of possibilities that Rava was saying is that you don't have a solid handbreadth of a wall. What you need really is to divide it in half and make a Eruvin type of a wall with 2 poles, each being a half a tefach. And altogether, it equals a tefach. So that's what the law of the third wall being a tefach is, that it's really a Eruvin type of wall that you have in that wall needs to actually be half a tefach on each side. And you have a beam going across it. So you have like it's called a tzuras hapesach, a form of a doorway, a form of an entrance. That's considered your third wall. And that was one way of learning. Then there was another way of learning that Rava says that what you said previously about a tefach being however you learned it, that's one option. And Rava adds an alternative option that if you don't want to do it that way, you could use a tzuras hapesach. So it's not one concept that the third wall that's the size of a handbreadth is divided in 2, and you put the 2 poles that are half handbreadths on each side of the wall, and you have a beam on top. No. One option is the tefach, what we explained earlier, that you put a solid handbreadth of beam that's solid. It's a solid handbreadth. You put that either next to the walls or 2.9 inch handbreadths away from the wall. Fine, that's one option. Option B, Rava's adding a new option that you could also do a Tzuras Pesach option, which doesn't have to do with the tefach. You don't need a tefach for this option. This is the Eruvin style option. You put a beam, two beams on each side, and a beam across, two poles on each side, a beam across. You're all set. And then there's a third way of learning Rava's statement, and that was that you need both. That what you said until now is correct. We need 2.9 handbreadths of space. Then you got 1.1 handbreadth of a tefach of solid. And then from that area, after you finish the 1.1 handbreadth of solid, from there until the end of the wall, you need to have an entrance way. It has to be a form of an entrance way. So you have a combination of a number of laws that will make this wall into a wall. That was basically the different opinions about the tefach. Definitely a complicated rule. This whole tefach, this whole special law about the third wall being a tefach. Now, what exactly is the mechanism of this third wall being a tefach? And this is really a theoretical, it's more of a philosophical maybe question. Does the tefach, the handbreadth of this third wall, is it just kosher because that's all you need? Or do we consider the third wall that the tefach expands, and we consider that as if it expands into a third wall? So do you really have a third wall? It's just that all you need is the tefach and we make it into a third wall? Or all you really need is the tefach? You don't need a third wall. You need a portion of a third wall. Or is it that we consider it that this portion extends almost like the other laws of a good achis, a good asik, that the wall extends upward, or as maybe here also the tefach wall, it extends and it's considered like a third wall. And the truth of the matter is that it goes much further than that. What about the fourth wall of the sukkah? Do we consider the fourth wall that you don't need a fourth wall in the sukkah? Of course, we had that opinion earlier, yesterday, the day before, we had an opinion that there needs to be a fourth wall, but we don't hold that way. But why don't we need a fourth wall? Is it because you really don't need a fourth wall? All you need is three? Or is it because you need four walls? But the fourth wall in the laws of sukkah is considered an entrance. That the entrance, that's considered a fourth wall. So I'm just sharing with you some of the discussions in the commentaries, the later commentaries, of the mechanism of how the rules of the walls work, and different, the different ways of looking at it. Is it considered like a full wall, or is it just that it's good enough with this measure? And even the fourth wall seems to be a discussion about the reason for the permissibility of not having a fourth wall. Is it because it's a doorway, or is it really because you don't need a fourth wall? Now, the other Gemara that I skipped, there's a little piece in the middle here that I skipped because I wanted to discuss this one topic. In the Gemara in the middle here, it really went off to a different scenario. So now let's talk about that. The Gemara here brought down a statement from Rav Yehuda. Rav Yehuda talked about a case where a sukkah is made like a mavoi. It's made like an alley. So it means you have two parallel walls. So when you have a sukkah that's two parallel walls, so Rav Yehuda says that all you need is really a tefach, a handbreadth, for the third wall. So in other words, the earlier Gemara talked about an L shape, where you have two walls touching each other. And there we had a whole discussion of where the third wall tefach, the handbreadth for the third wall, has to be placed. And this really is a different type of case. This is a case where the two walls are parallel to each other. And here, Rabbi Yehuda wants to say you can put that extra handbreadth of the wall wherever you want. Put it next to any of those four options. You got two parallel walls. Each one has two ends to it. So you can stick it at this end, stick it at that end, wherever you want. You stick that third wall could go anywhere. And on that case, we had also Rav Sivan and Rabbi Shub and Levi, who says, no, in that case, you actually need to make a little stronger. It needs to be a better type of wall. It needs to be daled tfachim, 4 handbreadths, and there's a way it has to be exactly. You have to put it 4 handbreadths. It has to be a little above 4 handbreadths, and it's 2.9 handbreadths away from the wall, and you have 2.9 handbreadths away from the wall. Then a solid wall of 4.1 handbreadths, so 2.9 plus 4.1 equals 7. So that means that you have a kosher wall sukkah, because the law of Levi, which we've been learning about for a while now, Levi is the attached, anything within 3 handbreadths is considered attached. So you have that Levi together with the solid wall of 4.1 handbreadths. So you have 2.9 empty space, which falls into the category of Levi, 4.1, which is solid, 2.9 plus 4.1 equals 7. That's a kosher sukkah. That's a wall. That will be your third wall, and that will be the proper way to have a kosher sukkah with 2 parallel walls, and the third wall physically will be 4 handbreadths. Yes, Victor. Oh. So that's the Gemara there. The Gemara had a question on that. It said, why? What's the difference? Why, when it's 2 parallel walls, is it so different than if it's the L-shaped over by the parallel walls? You didn't need 4 solid. You didn't need a 4 handbreadth solid. Here you need 4 handbreadth solid. The Gemara answers that there's a difference, that when it's 2 parallel walls, you need to have a much bigger solid wall, like what the term that Rashi uses, a doifen gomor, a complete wall. And it has to do with the fact that at least it'll look more like it's a wall. When you have the 2 parallel, it ruins the whole look of it. It doesn't look like a sukkah. So if you have a solid 4 handbreadths, 4.1 actually, then it actually works. So that was the Gemara's answer. That the other case, it's you have 2 walls kihil chasan, like they're supposed to be, which we're including this concept of being an L shape, that they're next to each other. So here it needs to be a more solid type of a wall in order for it to be fulfill the obligation of sukkah. Okay. So now that we've gone over basically yesterday's Gemara, and there was one more thing that I wanted to mention. I see Ezra just arrived. The Gemara that Ezra had a question yesterday about the pasuk. We had an opinion yesterday from Reb Shimon. Reb Shimon held that you need to have 3 full walls, and the 4th wall could be a handbreadth. That was Reb Shimon's opinion. Gemara said that he learns it. There were 4 different ways of understanding the source of the argument. And then the Gemara came up with a 5th way, and that was the opinion of Rav Masna. And he said Reb Shimon has a whole different reason why he holds you need to have 4 walls. He learns it from this pasuk of the Sukkah tiyel etzel yoimam, that he brings this pasuk from Yeshaya, which we have brought before. There is a pasuk. The pasuk was brought earlier on in Sechta, and talked about it with regard to having a sukkah that's too tall. And so the pasuk tells us that the sukkah should be for tzel, which means shade during the day, and also it should be mechsa mistar. It should be protection and refuge from the storm and rain. And so the understanding of the Gemara doesn't really spell this out, but the understanding was that a sukkah is meant to protect you from rain. It means you need to have walls. And so he learns you need to have 4 walls. That was the source of Reb Shimon. This is Reb Shimon's source. You need to have 4 walls. It needs to protect you from rain. So Ezra had mentioned yesterday, and we were discussing it a little, that we learned a while back about the sukkah is supposed to be a temporary dwelling. That means that the rain is supposed to be able to come through a sukkah. Otherwise, it's not considered really temporary. It needs to be able to come through. And how is Reb Shimon really learning over here that he's explaining this pasuk to mean that the sukkah is going to protect you from rain? So the thing is, let me mute everyone here. The thing is, we also learned last time that from this pasuk, we said that really what it's teaching you is that a sukkah needs to protect you from shade. Because when it talks about protecting you from rain and storms, it really is going on mechsa and mistar, which means protection from those. But when it says the word sukkah in the pasuk, the word sukkah says for tzel, for shade from the choyre, from the heat, from the sun. So what it sounds like from the understanding of the pasuk, and this is how we explained it last time when we came across this pasuk, was that the sukkah part of it is meant to protect you from the sun, but it's not meant to protect you from the rain. That's when it says mechsa and mistor, protection from rain. That's a different term. The word sukkah is used specifically. Sukkah is letzel yaimam mechayre. It's a sukkah for shade from the heat. So it sounds like it's not meant to be a sukkah from the rain, and that's the way we understood in halacha. That halacha is supposed to be able to rain through. To the extent that we spoke about different cases, we spoke about a complicated case where someone came up with a way of putting the schach in such a way that it rolls off your temporary roof will not cause rain to come in. Would that be kosher? We had a whole discussion, the argument among the later poskim, among the authorities. If you figured out a way how to fit your schach into each other that it blocks the rain, would that be okay? And does that ruin its element of being a arai, a sukkahs arai, a temporary dwelling, and so on? But nevertheless, the point that I'm making is how is Reb Shimon learning over here about the sukkah being protection from rain? Now, Reb Shimon is using this to prove that you need 4 walls. You need to have 4 walls for your sukkah because there has to be protection from rain. So the understanding seems that it's not really a contradiction to the way we explained it earlier. And I'll tell you why. But the way we explained it earlier was talking about the roof. The roof needs to be tzel. That has to be shade. The walls have to be protection from rain. So he's talking about the walls now. The mechsa mistar. This is not the sukkah part. This is not the schach part. This is the walls part. So the Gemara earlier, we talked about the roof part. And on that, we explained, no, the roof, not supposed to be protection from rain. That's protection from that's shade. The wall part is protection from rain. So this, Rav Shimon holds, you need to have a potential sukkah that protected it. It needs to be four walls. Now, it turns out that the halacha l'may should be seen, according to Rav Shimon, is that one of the walls is good enough to be a tefach. So it's not exactly protecting you from rain. But what he's saying is that the initial law of the Torah is that it needs to be 4 solid walls because that's the concept of protection from rain. And the halacha l'Moshe b'Sinai, Hashem told Moshe, but that fourth wall, I don't mind, if it's okay if it's a tefach, if it's a one hand breadth. But in essence, you need to have four walls according to him. Now, the question is, what are the rabbis? Yes.
Rabbi, if we're using lattice walls, how's that a protection from rain?
So again, Reb Shimon doesn't explain himself clearly to what extent he's taking this. How far is he going to take this rule? But what he is clearly saying, and this is not my own insight. If you look at Rashi, he says, the Gemara said clearly he holds you need four walls, and he learns it from this pasuk. All I'm bringing out, really, more than the Gemara spells out, is that we're dividing the pasuk up. The pasuk talks about schach, and it talks about protection from rain. In what the way Reb Shimon is saying it, what he's really saying is that the protection from rain is about the walls part, not about the schach part. That's all I'm really bringing out. I'm just shining a flashlight onto that point, which I'm not really adding anything. But what he's saying is you need these four walls. How do you know you need four walls? Because the pasuk says that it's supposed to be protection, that a sukkah is protection from rain. Now I say that we don't know how far he's taking that. What do I mean? Does the walls have to be solid walls, according to Reb Shimon, that they can't that you can't have any rain possibly come in? Does he take it? Is that the way he learns? Again, we don't really. Well, obviously, we don't paskin this way, but we're learning in Reb Shimon's view. How does he? How does he learn? Does he hold that? That it needs to be, how solid does it really need to be? Now, the Gemara later is going to bring Reb Shimon, and that Reb Shimon does hold that you need to have a sukkah keva, which would mean a solid sukkah. And so Reb Shimon, so seemingly, he holds along the lines of being more like a solid house. But again, it's a little vague how far he's taking it. In other words, does he mean that it has to have walls similar to walls that would protect from rain? In other words, you need four walls, and just like protection from rain would be four walls, that's how you need, a sukkah needs to have four walls. Or is he taking it to the extent that I want it made out of material that's going to protect you from rain? You know what I mean? He doesn't really spell it out that way, that you need to make it from material. The Gemara doesn't really say that you need to make it from material that's going to protect you from rain to that extent. So I don't know if I would take it that far, but he's more learning the concept that you need four walls, and it's similar to a sukkah that's similar to a structure that the sukkah saves you from the shade, from the sun, and the walls will shade you from the rain. But that's how he's understanding the pasuk, that it's sort of like teaching you that a sukkah should have walls, should have four walls. Again, maybe he's taking it further. We don't see that here in the Gemara. It doesn't spell it out that he holds that it has to be solid, solid walls. The Gemara does say that he holds it needs to be a sukkah keva. He holds it has to be to some extent a permanent dwelling, four walls. But to what extent that means, and it's unclear how far he's taking that. Now, the question is, what do the rabbis do?
Also, what about the fact that rain is going vertically and walls are protecting from sideways? So what does walls have to do with rain? Like if you have a nice big sukkah, the walls are not really, like if you're in the middle of a big sukkah, whether there's walls there or not, how's that protection from rain?
So really, there's two words here: zerem and matar. And the zerem word is really what I guess is the more important word to emphasize, and that is the stormy. It's stormy, and that stormy word means that it's not necessarily only vertical rain. It's coming from all directions and blowing from all directions. So just like even regular rain sometimes is not directly straight down, but here it's stormy. It's really you need a fourth wall. Now, I did mention yesterday that even Reb Shimon holds that the halacha l'Moshe Sinai comes and knocks this whole thing off and says the fourth wall could even be a tefach. So he sort of knocks off this whole concept that it's not going to get that you're not going to get wet. You are going to get wet. The fourth wall could be even a tefach, but the concept that you need four walls, he learns from that pasuk in Yeshaya that there should be an initial idea of a structure that has four walls. And true, it doesn't have to be so perfect. Yes, Jeffrey.
Is it possible that Rabbi Shimon is from Babylonia, and some of the other Tanaim, whatever, are not, and the weather is completely different in Babylonia, and so like our climate,
right?
We know that it's likely to rain, and in Boston, a place like that, even snow in Sukkot. We have pictures of So his concept of the ideal, these are ideal sukkahs we're talking about. What is a minimum to ideal sukkah? So yes, it has to have tzchach on top, so it's impermanent and it can blow away and all that. But other than that, it's recommendable as far as he's concerned, where he lives, for it to really be more keva for the ground part.
Right. And he it sounds like a nice a nice idea to try to put that into his put that in here, but I don't believe so. I don't believe you can explain it that way. It's just the Gemara totally does not give any significance to where he comes from. Sometimes the Gemara does things like that, like it says, well, he comes from here, he comes from there. But our Gemara seems to be basing it on a pasuk, and it's based on it's the concept. And also I believe in Eretz Yisrael you do have a lot of storms as well over there. I can't think of one right now, but from the few times that I've been in Israel, but I believe that there's rainy season, and during that rainy season there must be some nice heavy rains as well, or above. It just seems to me like there's it's going to be hard to say that someone was in a place where there was no rain at all.
No, but in the Gemara they always talk about the hottest time of year, is Sukkot, right? And right. So when one mitzvah was given to the other nations, they complained, right? Yeah.
Right.
Right. So they gave them the sukkah, and they didn't want to sit in the sukkah. It was too hot.
Right.
Okay. Anyhow,
Tractate of Zara, talks about it. Yeah.
Wonderful to consider this. Thank you.
Yeah, it's an interesting thought, but anyway, the bottom, the other point that I wanted to mention is Tosfos over here on the bottom on page 6b. Bottom Tosfos brings a Yerushalmi, and he says that a little different than the way Rashi learned. The Yerushalmi seems to have another understanding of the source that Reb Shimon is the way Reb Shimon is learning this pasuk. So he says that if you take that pasuk and cut it up, you end up having the pasuk tells you about 5 different protections. It says Sukkah is for Tzel Yoimam Echayrev, that's 1. Then it says Mechse Mistor, protection, refuge, that's 2 and 3. And then you have Zerem in Matar, storm and rain, which is 4 and 5. That means that a sukkah needs to have 5 protections. What are the 5 protections? The 4 walls and the schach. That's the way Reb Shimon is learning. And the Yerushalmi says, this is the statement in Yerushalmi. The Yerushalmi says, and the rabbis, they consider the rain and the storm as one. It's stormy rain. It's not a storm and rain, it's stormy rain. So that's the way they have 4 altogether. And ultimately, according to that, it's the way to explain the previous Gemara is that Shimon says you need a schach and you need 4 walls. And that 4th wall could be a tefach. And the rabbis say you need schach and you need 3 walls. And that 3rd wall could be a tefach. So that's the way the Yerushalmi is understanding this argument between Shimon and the rabbis. Rashi had learned a different shot that it's based on the fact that just the concept of rain, that means you need 4 walls. But Taisus says it's Taisus brings Yerushalmi that it's based on the dividing up the pasuk and seeing different sources, different terms in that pasuk that it uses, that each one should be a lesson that shows you about having a wall. So that means this wall and that wall and the third wall and a 4th wall and a 5th wall. Ultimately, you have 4 walls plus schach, and that's how the Yerushalmi understands that he's learning from the pasuk in Yeshaya. And I mentioned yesterday as well that the pasuk from Yeshaya, you have to be a little careful how you're learning it, because we don't normally learn halachas from a book of prophets. So even though he's basing it on that pasuk, it's more of a gilui milsa bialma. It's more of revealing what a sukkah structure should consist of, and that's how he's he's sort of like just explaining, or it's explaining what the sukkah of the Torah is talking about. It's just explaining. We're not learning the halacha from Yeshaya. We're just learning a fact about what a sukkah really should mean, and then now you have the Torah's law of sukkah kicks in. But it's with the explanation that Yeshaya gave, or Yeshaya understood this is the halacha, and he just wrote it, he just spelled it out. But however you learn, it's not exactly learned from the pasuk in Yeshaya. But that was the previous Gemara. Yeah.
How do you have a 5th wall? How's that?
He's including the roof. That the roof is a type of protection, and the walls are protection. Each 5 protections. So that's the Yerushalmi's way of understanding it. Okay, so now that we've gone through the previous Gemara, let's start with the new piece. I just want to emphasize, I rushed through that last piece. Again, the final thing we learned yesterday was that Rava adds some point over here, which the Gemara says there's 3 ways of understanding what Rava added. One understanding was that he's explaining the 3rd wall being a tefach differently than we learned it earlier, in that the tefach of the 3rd wall is divided in half. You have a half a handbreadth on 2 poles that are, the thickness is a half a handbreadth, and you have a beam on top. That's the meaning of the 3rd wall being a tefach. The other interpretation of Rava's statement is that you have an alternative to having a 3rd wall, a tefach, would be to have an entrance way, similar to the laws of Eruvin, where you make some type of an entrance. You have a pole of any size with a beam on top. That would be a alternative to having a 3rd wall with a tefach. You could have this instead of the 3rd wall with the tefach. And the 3rd way of Rava was that you need both. That whatever you learned until now, that you need a tefach, you need a handbreadth, you actually need a handbreadth, and you need the suras hapesach, the entranceway form, the form of an entranceway. So you have 2.9 handbreadths empty space. You've got 1.1 handbreadth of solid wall, and then you have from that end of that 1.1 solid wall till the end of the wall, you have an entranceway, which could be any size pole that will be in a beam on top, which would be filling up the 3rd wall. And ultimately, you have a very halachic 3rd wall. This is not a solid 3rd wall. This is a halachic 3rd wall. And with all that said and done, it might be easier to just build yourself a 3rd wall. But if you want to do it the halachic way, you can somehow cut, put a piece here, calculate it, do it that way. Now, the Gemara says that Ravashi, we're up to the on page 7a, Ravashi, which must be about 20 lines from the bottom of the page. So it's the first word on the line, 7a, Ravashi. And if you have the art scroll, we are on 7a2, and the bottom of the first column. Okay, 782, bottom of the first column. The Gemara says as follows, and this is a continuation of what I just talked about. Rav Ashi Ashkechel Rav Kahana. Rav Ashi found Rav Kahana de Ka'avid Tefach Soiche. He found that Rav Kahana did this tefach, which was an extended tefach, a handbreadth that's a little bigger than a handbreadth, which we called it a 1.1 handbreadth, and he did that. And he also made this entranceway for him. So again, he's got the 2.9 empty space on the third wall, 2.9 handbreadths of empty space. He's got the 1.1 solid handbreadth called the tefach soichik, and then he's got an entranceway. Now, who did he follow? Which statement of Rava, which way of understanding Rava's statement is Rav Kahana following? So it's the third way, that you need everything. You need the handbreadth, the tefach soichik, you need the space, you need the entranceway. So he's following that third way of Rava. Now, Rav Ashi seems that wasn't familiar with that. And Rav Ashi found that Rav Kahana did this. He says, what are you doing so much chumras over here? Building this and that. Well, he says, Rav Ashi asked him, he says, didn't you know what Rava says? That Rava says, V'niteres nami b'tzuras haPesach. That Rava says that if you don't want to do the handbreadth option, you don't have to. You could just do a entranceway. You don't need to do both. You do one or the other. Niteres nami. What are you doing both for? Yeah, you have 2, 3. The third wall, you're making like 2 of them over here. You're doing this way and that way. Why do you need to do why do you have to do it so much? Rava says it's either or. It's alternatives. You could choose this or choose that. Amar Le. So Rav Kahana told Rav Ashi, Ana ki'idach lishna de Rava sfirali. I hold like the other understanding of Rava, that you need both. The Amar Rava, that Rava said, Utsricha nami tzuras haPesach, you also need a tzuras haPesach. You also need there to be a form of an entranceway. And so that was Rav Kahana's answer to Rav Ashi, that I am following the other statement of Rava, meaning the other understanding of what Rava's statement was. So that's the end of this little piece of Gemara. There's a discussion, of course, who the halacha follows over here, because on the one hand, we have Rav Ashi seems to say that the halacha follows. Rav Ashi seems to say, why are you doing it this way? It seems like Rav Ashi is saying that the halacha should be that you could do either or. It would be the middle option of Rava. And that would be, based on Rav Ashi's statement over here. However, the other Rishonim don't seem to agree with that. They seem to say that that's not necessarily so, that you see Rav Kahana held the opposite way, and that maybe that would be more of the proper way to do it. Okay. The Gemara now says Shtayim Kihilchasa. Now, what we need to do in order to understand this Gemara, you need to remember that we're learning a special law about Sukkah. Sukkah has a special law that the third wall could be a tefach, a handbreadth. With regard to the laws of Shabbos, we don't really know about this idea of a wall being a handbreadth. This is not exactly doesn't fit within the rules of Shabbos. If you learn Hilchos Shabbos, there's laws of what makes something a private domain in Hilchos Shabbos, and to make a private domain, 2 walls with a third wall that's a tefach doesn't work. However, with regard to the laws of Sukkah, it does work. So the Gemara is going to be discussing what about if you have such a sukkah that we said is kosher, would you be allowed on Shabbos to use it based on the fact that it falls within the rules of what a wall is, according to the laws of Sukkah? Would that wall take on the criteria of being called a wall, also regarding the laws of Shabbos?
Can you carry in your sukkah?
Can you carry in the sukkah? Is it considered a wall regarding Shabbos? You know, it's funny. Yesterday, I davened mincha at a minyan here in North Miami Beach, where they have a mincha with a ma'ariv right after. The ma'ariv right after they do it after plag ha-mincha, so they can daven ma'ariv early. Now they can't say sfiras ha'omer in that at that minyan. They can't count sfira. So some guy asked me. He says, yesterday was erev Rosh Chodesh. So after mincha, a guy says to me, he says, "Can we say Yalav Yavoy in ma'ariv? It's not Rosh Chodesh yet. Rosh Chodesh doesn't start till later." Right? So the thing is, he's davening ma'ariv, but he says, I mean, Rosh Chodesh starts when it gets dark, right? On ma'ariv, I can daven early. But is it Rosh Chodesh? How can I say Yalav Yavoy? So what do you think? Can you say Yalav Yavoy when you daven ma'ariv early?
Yep.
Yes, you can.
We do early Shabbos, right? We change
The
the
Shabbos you can accept
yeah.
early. Shabbos you're allowed to accept early.
What about Rosh Chodesh?
Rosh Chodesh you can't accept early. It's not Rosh Chodesh. But the thing is, yes, Jeffrey?
Maybe the Molad was before.
Yeah, but that doesn't make it Rosh Chodesh. I don't know. So, yes, Yehuda.
I'm sure this is Friday morning.
Yehuda, you want to say something?
No, Rosh Chodesh is Thursday night. It's not Friday morning. It's Thursday night.
No, he might have been saying the Moilad. The Moilad.
Oh, well,
Yeah. What did you say, Yehuda?
At Sky Lake, we always daven early, Yom Harav early, and so we don't count the Omer, and we have to say the Shema again.
Right.
But
Yeah.
last night we davened early, and we did include Rosh Chodesh.
Right. So everyone seems to know the halacha. The thing
Right.
is, why is that? Because
Well,
Shabbos you're allowed to. I'm sorry.
And one last question: when it's, let's say, early Shabbos happens to be Rosh Chodesh.
Right.
I don't know if it ever happens, but let's say
Right.
it's early Shabbos, and that night is also Rosh Chodesh.
So
Right.
you say
What are you going to
everything.
say? You can't say we're going to say Shabbos. We're not going to say Rosh Chodesh.
Right.
How's it going to work?
Well, let me ask you a different question. What happens if you finish ma'ariv, plag ha-mincha, you daven this early ma'ariv, and you eat a meal right afterwards?
Oh, and you're going to bench.
You got a bench. Do you say Yalav Yavoy and you're benching?
and Ritzay.
Well, that would be right if it's Erev
Oh,
Shabbos.
that's-
That's another story. Let's not say it's a weekday. Don't get us too
Weekday.
complicated, Isaac. So it's a
It's
weekday.
a weekday.
The
So can
answer
you
is
say Yalav? What do you say Yalav
No.
Yavoy in your benching? I don't think so.
you
Right,
can't.
Ezra, you can't. Right.
Right.
Unless you drag the meal into beyond
Rosh Chodesh.
Seit, then and that time that you could probably do.
So, right, you're talking about after Rosh Chodesh. I'm talking about
By
before
the
Rosh
time
Chodesh.
you bench. No, by the time you bench.
By the time you
it's
bench,
already
you
done.
drag your meal into, and then you continue eating. Right, you continue eating. No, I'm talking about benching before Shkia. You're
Then the
benching
ans-
before
the
Shkia.
answer is no.
I don't think you could say Yalav Yavoy. So in other words, it's not Rosh Chodesh yet. Not for you even. But the thing is that regarding the laws of Ma'ariv, it's considered Ma'ariv. This is considered the night prayer. So since it's considered the night prayer regarding davening, it's considered the night prayer regarding Rosh Chodesh. No, is it Rosh Chodesh yet? No. but it's the night prayer that you're
What
allowed
other Marav? What other Marav are you going to daven?
to.
What are you going to do? Friday night, you're going to daven Shabbat. You're going to daven a weekday Marav. I mean, of
No,
course.
my point is, Ma'ariv for Friday, you could daven Friday, no problem. Shabbos.
Okay, so you could. So your
Because you can
example,
accept
Friday,
Shabbos
you end up
early.
doing benching with just Ritzay.
Right. So my point is this: that Shabbos Friday night, there shouldn't be a problem of davening early and including Shabbos in your davening. Why? Because you're allowed to accept Shabbos early
Shabbos.
from Plag HaMincha. You can accept it Shabbos. Shabbos. Is it Shabbos? Yeah, for me it's Shabbos already. But can you say it's Rosh Chodesh already? There is no concept of Tosefes Rosh Chodesh that you add on to Rosh Chodesh. There's a concept of Tosefes Shabbos where you add on to Shabbos, you add on to Yom Kippur. You know, you can add on to the Yom Tovim, and it's a mitzvah to add on. You're supposed to add on. You don't have to add on from Plag HaMincha. I mean, that's quite machmir, but there's a mitzvah to add on. So the thing is, with regard to Shabbos, with regard to Shabbos,
You
not
can
such
do
a
that.
question. But the guy asked me about Rosh Chodesh. It was interesting. So anyway, so the thing is that it's really, is it Rosh Chodesh really? It's not Rosh Chodesh yet. But regarding the laws of davening Ma'ariv, you're davening the night Ma'ariv. Regarding Ma'ariv, it's considered a Ma'ariv of Rosh Chodesh. You know.
So what I'm saying is, on your Friday hypothetical, then if you're davening early and you're eating early, you end up then after you daven Marav for Shabbos with Yala V'Yovo.
But your benching would be
Do you say Yala V'Yovo in that Marav? Then if not, you're eating, you're benching with just the Ritzay and without Yala V'Yovo.
That's what it would seem like. Again, I didn't look this up in halacha. I'm guessing that would be correct, but I didn't look it up in halacha, so I'm not telling you the halacha. But it sounds to me like that would be correct.
Rabbi, what
Jeff,
was the decision on Friday night in the Rosh Chodesh?
It would seem if you ate early. Now it's not so simple to eat early because there's different opinions. If you're Yotze the Sudas Shabbos and Kiddush before the Zman, so there's discussion about that. So I just want to mention that on the side. Don't think that you can get away with this with no shilas. There are different opinions about this, but let's say you did it. You made Kiddush, and you ate early, and you benched.
Shilas.
What is that?
You can't get out of bed without Shilas.
So you made Kiddush and you benched before sundown. So if you did that, now that means you went pretty fast because you davened the whole Kabbalah Shabbos and Ma'ariv after Plag, and you had a fast meal, and you finished and you benched it, and you're benching now, and it's Rosh Chodesh at night. And we're benching before Shkia, before sunset. So the thing is, it would seem that you would include Shabbos in your benching, but you would not include Rosh Chodesh in your benching. That's what it would seem like to me. You wouldn't include Rosh Chodesh in your benching.
Isn't there also, let's say when it's Motzei Rosh Chodesh and it's Shabbos, and let's say we're in Rabbeinu Tam, we're going to bench, and now it's dark. Now the question is, you probably shouldn't say Ya'aleh V'Yavo anymore either.
So that's another story because your meal was in Rosh Chodesh and Shabbos. So because your meal was Rosh Chodesh and Shabbos, you would do that. So anyway, I'm getting off really sidetracked over here. So if you want to ask any more questions, no problem afterwards. But in the meantime, let me just try to finish up over here. So I'm comparing that to the laws of Sukkah. What do I mean? Because in the laws of Sukkah, you have similar ideas that something might be considered a wall regarding Sukkah, but in the laws of Shabbos, you don't find it acceptable. So the question will be, what happens if you do it on the Shabbos of Sukkot? Will then it be acceptable? If you did it during the year round, no, it works for Sukkah, it doesn't work for Shabbos. But what about on the Shabbos of Sukkah that it's being halachically utilized? You're utilizing this law regarding the laws of Sukkah. Can it also be used regarding the laws of Shabbos?
Yeah, you can eat in the sukkah. You can eat in the sukkah, but you can't carry anything in it.
So maybe you have to put your food there before Shabbos, and it's or you need to make an eruv around. I don't know, you have to make a different eruv. This is not kosher for an eruv. Now, here comes the Gemara. So where the Gemara starts with shtayim kehilchasa. You need to have two walls made properly, and the third one works even if it's a tefach. Amar Rava, or on the side they change it to Rabba. Rabba said, "L'chein l'Shabbos." The same thing applies for Shabbos. Migu, since the Havya Doifen Linyan Sukkah, it's considered a wall regarding Sukkah. Havya Doifen Linyan Shabbos. It's going to be a wall for the law of Shabbos. So, seemingly what Rava is saying, that even though on Shabbos you need 3 walls for it to be considered a private domain, on Shabbos of Sukkot, you can rely on the third wall that is considered a wall regarding a sukkah. So you built a sukkah by the Reshus Harabim, by the public domain, and you have the minimal size sukkah. It's basically 2 walls, and the third wall is only a tefach. And you want to go and walk into your house from this sukkah. So even though in regular Shabbosim you wouldn't be allowed to do that, but on Shabbos of Sukkot it should be permissible. It will be permissible. And the reason is because it's considered a machitza regarding the laws of Sukkah, a special halacha, a special law that it's a shlishas afilu tefach, right? That it works. It's considered a tefach wall. So therefore, it's considered a wall regarding the Shabbos of Sukkah as well. So the Gemara says, Eisvei Abaye. Abaye asked a contradiction. And he said as follows. Umi amrinan migu. Do we really say migu? Is there? Can you use this concept? Are we allowed to make such a limud, such a way of learning? So the Gemara says that, and he brings a proof. V'hatanya, we learned in a brisa that sounds like you can't do this. It says in the brisa, doifen sukkah. Kedoifen Shabbos. The walls of a sukkah are like the walls, the laws of the walls of Shabbos, that whatever works for Shabbos will work for sukkah. The case that the understanding we're talking about is if you have poles are surrounding your property, so you just have single poles all around your property, each one is within 3 handbreadths of the next pole. So if you have such a thing, so that law would be considered regarding Shabbos a private domain. Private domain, it would work. It's a mechitza kshera. It's considered a kosher mechitza, and as long the brisa says uvolvad, as long as shelo yehi ben kana lachaverei shleisha tefachim, as long as you don't have between one and the other 3 handbreadths. So it's every pole is 2.9 handbreadths away from each other. Give, like, for example, 8 inches. Everything is within every 8 inches. You got another pole, you're all set. You have no problem. And that would be a kosher sukkah regarding, that would be kosher for Shabbos and kosher for sukkah. And so the understanding of Brisa is that a wall regarding sukkah is like the laws of a wall for Shabbos. And then it says, V'yasera Shabbos al sukkah, and Shabbos is more chomer, more strict than sukkah. Shabbos ain't on teres, that on Shabbos it's only permissible ella be'oimed meruba ala paras. Only if you have more solid than empty. Masha ein kain b'sukkah, which won't work for a sukkah. That but you don't need that for a sukkah. That a sukkah could even be kosher, even if it's not so much solid. So what does this mean in the brisa? So Abaye understands it. He says, "My lav." Doesn't this mean Yesera Shabbos to Sukkah, a Sukkah, that the Shabbos of Sukkot is more strict than the laws of Sukkah? That if something works for Sukkah, not necessarily is it going to work for Shabbos, even on Sukkot. And so you might have a situation where you will have something kosher for a sukkah that won't work for the sukkahs for the Shabbos during sukkahs. Well, and